The desperate proposal. The autumn rain pelted against the towering glass headquarters of Vega Technologies, matching the storm raging inside Olivia Reed. Her hands trembled as she clutched a folder containing her daughter Sophie's medical records. The security guard at the reception desk eyed her suspiciously, taking in her worn coat and the dark circles under her eyes. "I need to see Mr. Vega," Olivia said, summoning what little confidence remained after months of hospital visits, rejected loan applications, and dwindling hope. "Do you have an appointment?" The guard's voice held the certainty of someone who already knew the answer. "No, but please, it's urgent." Olivia leaned closer. "It's about my daughter. She's 7 and needs specialized treatment. I've tried everything else." Something in her voice must have reached him because he hesitated before picking up the phone. After a brief conversation, he pointed toward the elevators. "Floor 50, his assistant will meet you." The elevator ride gave Olivia precious minutes to rehearse her plea. Sophie's rare autoimmune condition required experimental treatment that their insurance wouldn't cover. $300,000 stood between her daughter and a chance at a normal life. A sleek-looking woman with a tablet greeted her when the doors opened. "Ms. Reed, I'm Patricia, Mr. Vega's executive assistant. He can give you exactly 5 minutes." Patricia led her through a minimalist office space to imposing double doors. "He's between meetings. Don't waste his time." Dominic Vega stood with his back to the door, gazing out floor-to-ceiling windows at the rain-soaked city below. At 38, he'd built Vega Technologies from nothing into a global empire. The business magazines called him brilliant, ruthless, and impossible to read. When he turned, Olivia understood why. His dark eyes assessed her with calculating precision. "You have 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Olivia took a deep breath. "Mr. Vega, my name is Olivia Reed. My daughter Sophie has Takayama syndrome. It's rare and there's a treatment trial at Princeton Medical, but it costs $300,000, he finished, surprising her. "I reviewed your letter. You've been quite persistent." "I've exhausted every option," Olivia said, opening her folder. "Sophie's responded well to preliminary treatments, but without the complete protocol." "Why me?" he interrupted. "There are dozens of wealthy people in this city. Charitable foundations, crowdfunding platforms. I've tried them all. The foundations have waitlists years long. Crowdfunding barely covered our last hospital stay." Olivia met his gaze directly. "And you have a personal connection to Takayama research. Your mother died from a related condition." His expression hardened. "You've done your homework." "I'd do anything for my daughter." Something flickered across his face. Recognition, perhaps. He walked to his desk and pressed a button. "Patricia, cancel my next meeting." When they were alone, again he studied her. "What exactly are you proposing, Ms. Reed?" "Alone," she said. "I'll work multiple jobs if needed. I'll pay back every cent. With your current salary as a freelance graphic designer, that would take decades." Olivia swallowed her pride. "Then tell me what you want. Anything. A dangerous offer to make to a man like Dominic Vega." He circled her slowly, considering. "I need someone I can trust," he finally said. "Someone desperate enough to be loyal. My current assistant is leaving and I require a replacement who won't be easily bought by competitors. You want me to be your assistant? For 1 year, you'll sign a binding contract, complete confidentiality, available day and night. In return, I'll cover all of Sophie's medical expenses, not just the treatment trial, but everything she needs." Olivia's mind raced. "I have Sophie to care for. I can't work 18-hour days. You'll have accommodations in my building, the best health care for Sophie, private tutoring when she's well enough." His voice was emotionless, laying out terms like any business deal. 1 year of your life for your daughter's future. Decide now. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Olivia looked at the photo of Sophie peeking from her folder, all curly hair and gap-toothed smile, too young to understand why she was always tired, always in pain. "I accept," she whispered. "Good." Dominic pressed another button. "Patricia, bring in the contract for Ms. Reed." As Patricia entered with a tablet, Dominic leaned closer to Olivia. "Remember this, Ms. Reed. I don't offer charity. Everything has a price. What Olivia couldn't know was that Dominic Vega had recognized something in her desperate eyes. The same determination he'd once seen in his own reflection, years ago when he'd promised his dying mother he would survive at any cost. And as Olivia signed away a year of her life, neither of them realized that the real price would be paid not in time or money, but in the carefully guarded walls around their hearts. Behind closed doors, the Vega Technologies building became Olivia's world overnight. Her new apartment on the 48th floor was larger than any place she'd ever lived. A sleek, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that looked too pristine to touch. Sophie's room had been meticulously prepared with a hospital-grade bed and monitoring equipment that would make her recovery more comfortable. "This is really ours?" Sophie had whispered their first night, her thin fingers tracing the constellations projected on her ceiling. Despite her exhaustion from the day's treatment, her eyes sparkled with wonder. "For now, sweetheart," Olivia had answered, careful not to make promises beyond their one-year arrangement. Now, 3 weeks into their agreement, Olivia hurried through her morning routine. Patricia had spent only 2 days training her before departing for a position with a rival company, leaving Olivia to navigate Dominic's demanding schedule alone. Her phone buzzed at precisely 5:45 a.m. "The Tokyo conference call has been moved up. Be in the office in 15 minutes. Dominic's voice was clipped, allowing no room for negotiation. Olivia quickly checked on Sophie, still sleeping peacefully with Mrs. Hernandez, the night nurse, watching over her. The older woman nodded reassuringly. "Go. We'll be fine." The private elevator whisked Olivia directly to the executive floor. When the doors opened, she found Dominic already pacing his office, his tailored suit immaculate despite the early hour. "Coffee," he demanded without looking up from his tablet. Olivia bit back a retort about the word please and prepared his usual, black, single-origin Ethiopian, precisely 94 degrees Celsius. She'd learned quickly that Dominic's exacting standards extended to everything. "The marketing report from yesterday had an error on page 17, he said as she placed the coffee on his desk. "The projection graphs don't match the data tables." "I noticed that too," Olivia replied, surprising him. "I already emailed Harrison in analytics. The corrected version should be in your inbox." Dominic paused, taking a sip of his coffee. For a moment, something that might have been approval flickered across his face before disappearing behind his usual mask of cool efficiency. The conference call went smoothly, with Olivia taking notes and occasionally sliding information to Dominic. When the Japanese executives asked unexpected questions, when the call ended, he turned to her with narrowed eyes. "You speak Japanese?" "Conversational only," she admitted. "I studied it in college." "That wasn't in your file. You didn't ask." She matched his direct gaze. The ghost of a smile touched his lips before he turned away. "The Henderson merger documents need to be reviewed by noon." The days fell into a pattern. Olivia arrived early and left late, juggling Dominic's relentless schedule while stealing moments with Sophie between meetings. She learned to anticipate his needs, to read the subtle shifts in his demeanor that signaled approval or dissatisfaction. What she hadn't expected was to glimpse the man behind the carefully constructed facade. It happened one evening when she returned to his office with revised contracts, finding him standing at the window, a glass of whiskey in hand. On his desk sat a small framed photograph she'd never seen before, a woman with dark eyes remarkably similar to his own. "Your mother?" Olivia asked quietly. Dominic didn't turn around. Today would have been her birthday. Olivia placed the contracts on his desk and turned to leave, recognizing his need for privacy. "She was diagnosed when I was 12, he said suddenly, stopping Olivia at the door. Takayama wasn't even recognized as a syndrome then. They called it unspecified autoimmune disorder. She died 3 years later. The raw pain in his voice made Olivia turn back. "I'm sorry. My father couldn't handle it. He left before she died." Dominic's laugh held no humor. "Some people aren't built to face suffering, and some people are stronger than they appear." Olivia replied, thinking of Sophie's brave smile through countless treatments. Something shifted in the air between them. Dominic drained his glass and set it down with deliberate care. How was Sophie's treatment today? The question caught Olivia off guard. He had never asked about Sophie before, though he received regular updates from the medical team. They've started the second phase. She was tired afterward, but her numbers are improving. Dominic nodded. Dr. Winters believes she'll respond well to the full protocol. You've spoken with her, doctor? Olivia couldn't hide her surprise. I pay for her treatment. Of course I monitor progress. His tone suggested this was perfectly logical, but something in his eyes betrayed deeper concern. The next morning, Olivia found a stack of research papers on her desk, the latest studies on Takayama syndrome from medical journals she couldn't afford to access. There was no note, no explanation, but she knew who had left them. As weeks turned into months, small changes accumulated. Dominic began scheduling meetings around Sophie's treatment appointments without Olivia having to ask. When an important client dinner ran late, she returned to find Dominic in Sophie's room, awkwardly perched on a chair while her daughter animatedly described her favorite constellation. Cassiopeia is shaped like a W, Sophie was explaining, her small finger tracing the pattern projected on the ceiling. She was beautiful but very vain. Beauty often comes with complications, Dominic replied, his usually commanding voice softened. He stood abruptly when he noticed Olivia in the doorway. Your daughter is quite knowledgeable about astronomy. The stars keep me company when I can't sleep, Sophie said matter-of-factly. Something raw flickered across Dominic's face before he composed himself. Ms. Reed, the Nakamura contract requires your attention. My office, 15 minutes. As he brushed past her, Olivia caught a glimpse of vulnerability that vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. That night, after Sophie had fallen asleep, Olivia found herself staring at the city lights below, contemplating the enigma of Dominic Vega. She had expected a tyrant, a cold businessman extracting his pound of flesh in exchange for saving her daughter. Instead, she found herself working alongside a man haunted by his own losses, whose ruthlessness seemed increasingly like armor against a world that had taught him early lessons in pain. A man who remembered how his mother had died, who silently monitored Sophie's progress, who left medical research on Olivia's desk without comment. Dangerous thoughts for a woman whose relationship with Dominic Vega was defined by a contract with an expiration date, a contract that made no provision for the unexpected complication of seeing beyond the mask he showed the world, or for the way her heart had begun to quicken when he entered a room. This is business, she whispered to herself, a necessary reminder, as the line between obligation and something more complex began to blur behind closed doors. Unexpected connections, he fired the entire development team. Olivia stood in the doorway of Dominic's office, stunned by the news that had rippled through Vega Technologies that morning. Dominic didn't look up from his computer. They failed to deliver. Again. The Artemis project launches in 6 weeks. You just eliminated everyone who understood the core programming. Are you questioning my decision? His voice carried that dangerous edge she'd learned to recognize. I'm trying to understand it. Olivia stepped fully into his office, closing the door behind her. 5 months into their arrangement, she had gradually become more than just his assistant, something closer to a trusted advisor, though neither acknowledged this shift. Dominic finally looked up, dark circles under his eyes betraying his exhaustion. The Artemis project isn't just another product launch, it's the future of this company. I know that. Do you? He stood abruptly. This neural interface technology will revolutionize medical monitoring. It could prevent thousands of deaths from conditions like... He stopped himself. Like Takayama syndrome, Olivia finished quietly. Something vulnerable flashed across his face before his expression hardened again. The development team was cutting corners on the biosensor calibration. They claimed it was good enough. His hands clenched. I don't accept good enough when lives depend on perfection. Understanding dawned on Olivia. This wasn't just business. For him, it was personal. The Artemis project was his response to losing his mother, his attempt to create technology that might have saved her. "We still need a team," she said gently. "I've made calls. Valentina Orlov arrives from St. Petersburg tomorrow." Olivia's eyes widened. "You got Valentina Orlov? She's practically a legend in biotech programming." "I'm taking over direct supervision of the project," Dominic continued. "Clear my schedule for the next month. Nothing takes priority over Artemis." "Sophie has her 6-month evaluation on Thursday," Olivia reminded him. For a moment, Dominic seemed torn. Then surprisingly, he nodded. "That stays on the calendar." The next few weeks transformed their routine. The conference room adjacent to Dominic's office became command central for the Artemis project. Valentina Orlov, a brilliant programmer with a shock of silver hair despite being only 35, assembled a small but exceptional team that worked around the clock. Olivia found herself drawn into the project, first managing logistics, then offering insights on the user interface that caught Valentina's attention. "You understand intuitively what medical professionals need," Valentina observed one night as they reviewed designs. "Most tech people overcomplicate things. My daughter's been in and out of hospitals her whole life," Olivia explained. "I've watched nurses struggle with poorly designed equipment while trying to care for patients." "Bring her in," Valentina suggested suddenly. "Sophie? Why?" "Children make excellent test subjects. They have no patience for bad design." Valentina grinned. "Besides, she is the demographic this will help, no?" That weekend, with Dr. Winter's approval, Sophie visited the Artemis lab. Her eyes widened at the sleek prototypes and glowing screens. "This looks like a spaceship," she whispered to Olivia. Dominic appeared from his office, clearly surprised to see Sophie there. He stopped awkwardly at the edge of the room, uncertain. "Mr. Vega." Sophie's face lit up with recognition. "Mom says you're making something that will help kids like me." Something shifted in Dominic's expression, a softening Olivia had rarely witnessed. "That's the plan," he answered, approaching cautiously as though Sophie might break. "Would you like to see how it works?" What began as a simple demonstration evolved into hours of Sophie asking questions that made even Valentina laugh in delight at her curiosity. Dominic, to Olivia's amazement, showed infinite patience, explaining complex technology in terms Sophie could understand. "The sensors read your body's signals," he explained, showing her a translucent patch the size of a quarter. "Like a very smart Band-Aid that talks to doctors. So they'll know if something's wrong before I feel sick?" Sophie asked. "That's exactly right." "That would be awesome," Sophie said earnestly. "Sometimes I don't feel bad until I'm really bad, and then Mom gets scared." Dominic glanced at Olivia, catching the emotion on her face before she could hide it. The fear of those sudden hospital rushes lingered even as Sophie improved. Later, after Sophie had fallen asleep on a couch in the corner of the lab, Dominic found Olivia watching her daughter. "She's extraordinary," he said quietly. "Yes, she is." Olivia smiled. "Thank you for today. I haven't seen her this excited in a long time." She understood the technology better than some of my engineers. Pride colored his voice, surprising them both. "The treatment is working," Olivia said. "Dr. Winters says her inflammation markers have dropped by 60%. Dominic nodded, seemingly unsurprised by this information. "I receive her medical reports." "Of course you do." Olivia's tone held no judgment, only realization of how closely he'd been following Sophie's progress. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Sophie sleep. "Without planning to," Olivia confessed, "I was terrified when I came to your office that day. Not just of you saying no, but of what I was willing to do if you had." Dominic turned to her, his gaze intense. "What were you willing to do?" "Anything," she answered honestly. "When your child's life is at stake, there are no limits." He studied her face for a long moment. "My mother tried everything too. Experimental treatments in Mexico, healers in the Philippines. She sold our house, her jewelry, everything." His voice grew distant with memory. "The night before she died, she apologized to me. For failing. Failing. Olivia's heart ached at the thought. For not living. For leaving me alone. His voice was barely audible. I told her it wasn't her fault. It was the only time I ever lied to her. The raw confession hung between them. Olivia realized Dominic had never shared this with anyone before. You were a child, she said gently. Children shouldn't have to be that strong. Neither should mothers. His eyes met hers, and something electric passed between them, a recognition of shared battles, of understanding that went beyond employer and employee. The moment was broken by Valentina calling Dominic to review code. As he turned away, his hand brushed Olivia's, perhaps accidentally, perhaps not. That night, carrying a sleeping Sophie back to their apartment, Olivia confronted the truth she'd been avoiding. Her feelings for Dominic had evolved beyond gratitude or professional respect. She was falling for the complex, wounded man behind the ruthless facade, the man who remembered his mother's last words, who explained technology to Sophie with endless patience, whose rare smiles made her heart race. A dangerous realization. Their arrangement had 7 months remaining, after which Sophie's treatment would be complete, and their lives would separate again. Olivia had no illusions about belonging in Dominic's world permanently. Yet as she tucked Sophie into bed, she couldn't help wondering if Dominic felt it too. This unexpected connection neither of them had sought, but which had somehow found them anyway, transforming a cold business arrangement into something neither was prepared to name. Breaking point. The success of the Artemis project launch should have been a moment of triumph. The medical community had embraced the technology with unprecedented enthusiasm, and Vega Technologies' stock soared. Industry analysts predicted the neural interface would revolutionize patient monitoring, particularly for those with complex autoimmune conditions. But as Olivia stood at the edge of the celebration in Vega's grand reception hall, champagne untouched in her hand, her thoughts were 60 floors away in the hospital wing where Sophie had been admitted 3 days earlier. You should be with her, came Dominic's voice from behind her. Olivia turned to find him watching her, his expression unreadable in the dimmed lighting. You said my presence was required tonight. The Korean investors have already signed the distribution agreement. He took the champagne flute from her hand and set it aside. Go to Sophie. The quiet authority in his voice was familiar, but something else lingered beneath it, concern that went beyond professional courtesy. What about the speech? You're supposed to announce the pediatric initiative in 20 minutes. I'm capable of making an announcement without my assistant, he said, his tone softer than his words. Gratitude washed over her. Thank you. As she turned to leave, his hand caught hers, a brief touch that sent warmth up her arm. Tell Sophie I'll visit tomorrow. I promised to show her the final version of the monitoring app. It was these moments, these glimpses of the man beneath the power suits and boardroom authority, that had gradually dismantled Olivia's defenses over the past 8 months. The small kindnesses no one else witnessed, the way his voice changed when he spoke to Sophie. The late nights when work became conversations that wandered into personal territory neither had intended to share. In Sophie's hospital room, Olivia found her daughter sleeping fitfully, her skin flushed with fever. Doctor. Winters had explained the setback as not unexpected, Sophie's body adjusting to the final phase of treatment. Still, after months of steady improvement, the regression felt devastating. Mom? Sophie's eyes fluttered open, her voice scratchy. I'm here, sweetheart. Olivia smoothed back Sophie's damp curls. Did Mr. Dominic win his award? Olivia smiled at Sophie's terminology. In her daughter's mind, business functions were like school ceremonies complete with trophies and certificates. It wasn't that kind of event, but yes, everyone loves his new invention. Sophie nodded sleepily. He made it for kids like me, he told me. Did he? This was news to Olivia. When you were getting coffee yesterday, he said his mom got sick like me. but they didn't have the right medicine back then. Sophie's eyes drifted closed again. He said now doctors will know sooner, when kids need help. Emotion tightened Olivia's throat. Dominic had visited Sophie daily since her admission, often bringing work to review while sitting quietly in the corner of her room. Olivia had assumed it was his way of keeping an eye on his investment, but Sophie's words suggested something more personal. The next morning, Olivia woke to the sound of quiet voices. She'd fallen asleep in the chair beside Sophie's bed, and now found Dominic sitting on the edge of the mattress, showing Sophie something on a tablet. "See how it tracks your heartbeat?" he was explaining. "And this shows your oxygen levels." Sophie's eyes were bright with interest despite her pallor. "Can I customize the colors? Pink is boring." "Absolutely. What color would you prefer?" "Galaxy." "Purple. With stars." The corner of Dominic's mouth twitched upward. "I'll have the design team work on that immediately." He glanced up, noticing Olivia was awake. Something flickered in his expression, embarrassment at being caught in this gentle interaction, perhaps. "Ms. Reed, I was just showing Sophie the beta version of the pediatric interface." "Galaxy purple," Olivia said with a smile. "Excellent choice." "Mr. Dominic brought breakfast," Sophie announced, pointing to a bag from the bakery Olivia loved, miles from the office. Before Olivia could respond, Dr. Winters entered with a team of specialists. Their expressions set off immediate alarm bells. "We need to discuss Sophie's latest results," Dr. Winters said quietly. Dominic stood immediately. "I'll leave you." "Stay," Olivia said, surprising herself. "Please." The news wasn't what they had hoped. Sophie's body was rejecting aspects of the treatment protocol. Her immune system, instead of stabilizing, had begun attacking healthy tissue again. "There's an alternative approach," Dr. Winters explained. "A more aggressive therapy combined with a new immunomodulator that's shown promising results in similar cases." "What are the risks?" Olivia asked, feeling the ground shifting beneath her. "Significant. The therapy is taxing, and the immunomodulator is still experimental." "What about success rates?" Dominic interrupted, his business persona emerging as he processed the information. Dr. Winters hesitated. 60% show marked improvement, 20% see moderate benefits. "And the other 20%? Olivia's voice was barely audible. The doctor's silence was answer enough. After the medical team departed, promising to return with more details that afternoon, Olivia sat frozen beside Sophie, who had mercifully fallen asleep during the examination. "She'll beat those odds," Dominic said firmly, standing by the window. "You don't know that." Tears threatened, but Olivia held them back. "I thought we were past this. I thought the worst was behind us." "It will be. We'll make sure of it." "We?" The word slipped out before she could stop it. Dominic turned to her, his expression intense. "Yes, we. Did you think I would abandon Sophie? Now? That our arrangement only covered the initial treatment?" "Our arrangement has 4 months remaining," Olivia reminded him, the reality of their situation suddenly crushing. "After that, Sophie and I are on our own again." "Is that what you think?" Anger flashed across his face. "That I've been counting down the days until I can wash my hands of you both? Isn't that the point of a contract? Clear terms, clear endpoints." The stress of the situation made her voice sharper than intended. "You bought a year of my life to help your company. I agreed because Sophie needed treatment. It was a business decision for both of us. Is that all it's been to you? Business?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Is that all I am to you? An employer?" The question hung between them, dangerous in its implications. "What else could you be?" she whispered, fear and longing warring within her. Before he could answer, Sophie stirred, breaking the moment. Dominic stepped back, his expression closing off. "I'll have my team research every specialist in experimental immunotherapy," he said, his business tone returning. "And I'll cover all costs for whatever treatment Sophie needs." "That wasn't our agreement. I'm amending the terms." His voice left no room for argument. "Why?" Olivia demanded, needing to understand. "Why go beyond the contract?" Dominic looked at Sophie's sleeping form, then back to Olivia. For a moment, his carefully maintained control slipped, revealing raw emotion. "Because some things matter more than contracts," he said quietly. "Some people matter more." With that, he left the room, leaving Olivia to confront the truth she'd been avoiding for months. Somewhere between late nights reviewing reports and quiet conversations about their pasts, between watching him explain technology to Sophie with endless patience and seeing the pain in his eyes when he spoke of his mother, she had fallen in love with Dominic Vega, and worse, much worse, was the growing suspicion that he might feel the same way. A suspicion that terrified her more than any business negotiation ever could. Because loving Dominic meant vulnerability. It meant believing in a future beyond their contract. It meant trusting that the connection between them was strong enough to bridge their different worlds. As she watched Sophie's chest rise and fall, with each breath Olivia faced the breaking point of their carefully structured arrangement. No contract could contain the emotions that had developed between them. No business agreement could dictate what happened next. In 4 months, their professional relationship would end. But what would remain when the contract that brought them together no longer bound them? The answer to that question frightened Olivia, more than any medical diagnosis ever could. Beyond the contract, the winter snow fell softly outside the windows of Sophie's hospital room, coating the city in white silence. 11 months after Olivia had first stepped into Dominic's office, Sophie sat propped against pillows, her color improved and her energy slowly returning. The experimental immunomodulator therapy was working, not without complications, but working nonetheless. "Look, Mom," Sophie said, pointing to her tablet. "The stars change with my heartbeat. When I'm calm, they twinkle slower." Olivia smiled. At the customized Artemis pediatric interface, galaxy purple with stars exactly as Sophie had requested. The monitoring system had become standard equipment in children's hospitals across the country, with Sophie proudly claiming to be patient 0. "Mr. Dominic said I helped design it," Sophie continued, "so other kids won't be scared of the monitors. He's putting my name in the credits." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Olivia brushed back Sophie's hair, longer now than it had been in years. A small victory after so many rounds of treatment. "Is he coming today?" The question hung in the air. Dominic hadn't visited in 3 days. The longest he'd been absent since Sophie's setback 4 months earlier. "He's very busy with the international launch," Olivia explained, the excuse sounding hollow even to her own ears. The truth was more complicated. As their contract neared its end, a strange tension had developed between them. Dominic had grown distant, burying himself in work, while Olivia found herself seeking reasons to avoid their once frequent late-night strategy sessions. Fear, she recognized. On both their parts. Fear of what happened when the framework that had brought them together dissolved. Fear of acknowledging feelings that had grown far beyond their original agreement. "Ms. Reed?" Olivia turned to find Patricia, Dominic's former assistant who had unexpectedly returned to Vega Technologies last month, standing in the doorway. "Mr. Vega requests your presence in his office. Immediately." "Now?" "Sophie's doctor is coming at. He said it's urgent, regarding the termination of your contract." A cold knot formed in Olivia's stomach. 1 week remained on their year-long arrangement. She had expected discussions about transition, about Sophie's ongoing care, but not like this. Not with the clinical detachment of a summons. "Tell Mr. Vega I'll be there in an hour, after Sophie's doctor visits." Patricia's eyes widened at the defiance. He was very specific about, and I'm being very specific about my priorities. Olivia kept her voice level to avoid alarming Sophie. "My daughter comes first. Mr. Vega will understand." After Dr. Winters delivered the encouraging news about Sophie's latest test results, Olivia made her way to Vega Technologies. The executive floor was unusually quiet for a Thursday afternoon. Dominic stood at the window of his office, his back to the door, in a posture so reminiscent of their first meeting that Olivia felt a wave of déjà vu. "You're late," he said without turning. "Sophie's doctor appointment took precedence, you know that." He turned then, his expression unreadable. "Yes." Family should always come first. Something in his tone made Olivia's pulse quicken. Patricia mentioned termination of contract? Sit down, Olivia. The use of her first name, still rare despite their months together, caught her attention. She took the chair across from his desk, bracing herself. Dominic remained standing, tension evident in the set of his shoulders. I've had the legal team prepare documents regarding our arrangement. I assumed you would. Olivia kept her voice steady. Sophie's treatment will continue for another year at least. I've been researching insurance options and that won't be necessary. Excuse me? Sophie's medical expenses will continue to be covered indefinitely. He placed a folder on the desk between them. I've established a medical trust in her name. It will pay for any treatment she requires, through college and beyond. Olivia stared at the folder, stunned. Why would you do that? Because her well-being matters to me. His eyes met hers directly, as does yours. Our contract was for 1 year, she said carefully. I don't expect. To hell with the contract. The sudden intensity in his voice startled her. Do you think that's all this has been to me? A business transaction? I don't know what it's been to you, Olivia admitted, her composure finally cracking. These past few weeks, you've barely spoken to me outside of work matters. You stopped visiting Sophie. It felt like you were preparing for our departure. Dominic ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. I was trying to prepare myself, to remember professional boundaries that disappeared months ago. And what boundaries were those? Olivia stood, unwilling to have this conversation from a position of disadvantage. The ones that were supposed to prevent me from falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them. Olivia's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he must hear it. That wasn't part of our agreement, she whispered. No. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It was the one variable I failed to account for. He moved around the desk until nothing separated them. I've spent my life building walls, Olivia, protecting myself from the kind of loss I experienced when my mother died. I constructed this company as the ultimate fortress, and then you walked in with your determination and your love for Sophie. And you made me remember what it feels like to care so deeply it terrifies you. Olivia's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. I thought I was imagining it, the way things changed between us. You weren't. His voice softened. I tried to fight it, to maintain professional distance, but every time Sophie smiled, at me, every time you challenged my decisions or saw through my defenses, those walls crumbled a little more. So you pulled away. I thought it would be easier. He stepped closer. I was wrong. Heart racing, Olivia found the courage to ask, what happens when our contract ends next week? That depends on you. Dominic took her hands in his. The contract was for your employment, not for what we've become to each other, not for what I hope we could be. And what is that? A family. The word seemed to surprise even him. The three of us, if you'll have me. The simplicity of it, this complex man reduced to the most fundamental human desire, broke something open inside Olivia. All the fears and doubts that had plagued her dissolved in the face of his vulnerability. Sophie asked me last week if you were going to be her dad, she confessed. She said you already felt like family. Emotion flashed across Dominic's face. What did you tell her? That I didn't know. That grown-up relationships are complicated. They don't have to be. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Not when you're certain. Inside lay a simple but elegant diamond ring. Olivia's breath caught. I'm not offering another contract, Dominic said softly. I'm offering forever. No terms, no conditions, no expiration date. Just love, for you and for Sophie. Tears spilled freely now as Olivia realized the full circle of their journey. She had come to him desperate, offering anything for her daughter's sake. He had responded with a business arrangement, walls firmly in place. And somehow, in the space between contract clauses and late-night conversations, between hospital rooms In board meetings, they had found what neither was looking for. Sophie will have questions about the legal implications, Olivia said, a smile breaking through her tears. Dominic laughed, a full, rich sound she had heard too rarely. She's already interrogated me about my intentions. 2 weeks ago when you went for coffee, she gave her approval but insisted on the galaxy purple color scheme for the wedding. You asked my 7-year-old for permission before asking me? She's an excellent negotiator, must take after her mother. Olivia looked at the man before her, no longer the cold CEO she had first encountered, but someone who had learned to open his heart again, who had found room for both her and Sophie inside. Yes, she whispered. To forever. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Olivia reflected on the irony of their beginning. She had offered a year of her life in exchange for Sophie's future. Instead, she had found a man who wanted not just a year but all the years to come, who saw in her daughter not an obligation but a gift, and in their unconventional family a chance to heal wounds neither had known how to address alone. Later, that evening when they told Sophie the news, her reaction was not surprise but satisfaction. Finally, she declared, examining the ring with approval, I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Figure what out? Dominic asked, sitting on the edge of her hospital bed. Sophie rolled her eyes with the wisdom of a child who sees what adults often miss, that some contracts are meant to be forever. As snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the city in possibilities, the three of them sat together, no longer bound by the terms of a desperate agreement, but by something far more enduring. Something that had begun as a business arrangement, but had transformed page by page into the most important contract of all, a promise to face whatever came next, together.